Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charlotte Kelly. I'm with the Pennington Public Library. Thank you for joining us today for Healthy Holiday Cooking with Taryn Krietzman of RWJ Fitness and Wellness Center. Before we begin, if you have any questions during the program for Taryn, please write them in the chat window this time rather than the Q&A, and then she can review them at the end of the program. Our presenter, Taryn Krietzman, is a registered dietitian nutritionist. She completed her bachelor's degree and dietetic internship with the University of Massachusetts. After working as a manager of the Healthy and Sustainable Option dining facility at her alma mater, Taryn returned home to New Jersey to manage a plant-forward café at Rutgers. Then when the pandemic upended her career in food service, Taryn shifted gears from serving food to growing it. At the end of the growing season, she became the coordinator and driver of a mobile food pantry. These two positions were incredibly transformative in igniting her passion for learning about agriculture, food systems, public health, and the links where the two meet. She now works as a community nutrition educator with RWJBarnabas Hamilton. Welcome, Taryn.
Thank you so much for having me, Charlotte. And thank you everyone for attending as well. I have a pre-recorded program that I will be sharing with you today, but I will certainly be moderating the chat and answering any small questions you may have. And at the end of the program, I'll be happy to answer any questions more in depth that you have about healthy holiday cooking and eating. If I may share. Ready to go? Okay. Enjoy. In just a moment, I want to make sure I'm sharing the right thing. There we go. Good. All right. Welcome to our Healthy Holiday Eating program. Thank you so much for joining me today. Again, my name is Taryn Krietzman. I'm the registered dietitian here with Robert Wood Johnson Community Education in Hamilton. So we're talking about healthy holiday eating, and I wanted to share with you a lot of different resources where I pulled information from for this program. There will be a Q&A after the program is complete. So if you have any questions in the meantime, any burning questions that you think you may forget, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll address them at the conclusion of this portion of the program. So I wanted to share with you just where all the information I have is coming from in case you want to explore some of those resources further. I used the online version of a lot of these places. So I have things specifically the National Institute of Health, or the NIH, at nih.gov. They have a program called We Can, which is pertaining to children in particular about nutrition and physical activity. I've also been using the USDA myplate.gov website, which is where we are getting a lot of our dietary guidelines, and the dietary guidelines for Americans come from. I'm not using the particular MyPlate model, but I'm using something very similar, which is coming from the Harvard School of Public Health. They also have a medical school from which I've pulled information. I also have stuff from UC Davis, from the Mayo Clinic, from Northwestern Medicine, the CDC, of course. So all of these are at your disposal to find more information about healthy holiday eating and healthy eating in general. And that's kind of where I want to start today. Healthy eating in general, because when we talk about, I want to eat healthy during the holidays, what does that mean? Let's start with our baseline. Let's get that squared away so we all know what we're talking about when we start. I'm going to show a photo here, and I'm just going to talk over it so you guys can see at home what exactly I'm talking about. This is our healthy eating plate. So this one is coming from the Harvard School of Public Health. It is based on the U.S. Department of Agriculture's MyPlate model, or the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, but it has a couple key differences, but most of it is the same. And the meat of it, if you will, is that half of your plate is fruits and vegetables. So the more veggies and the greater variety, the better. And eat plenty of fruits of all colors. We also want to be including whole grains. Whole grains, eat a variety of whole grains like whole wheat bread, whole grain pasta, and brown rice. Limit refined grains like white rice and white bread. Notice it says limit, do not eliminate. We also have healthy protein. Choose fish, poultry, beans, and nuts. Limit red meat and cheese. Avoid bacon, cold cuts, and other processed meats. And we can talk a little bit about that more too. Or if you have specific questions about that, you can certainly put them in the chat. Water. Drink water, tea, or coffee with little or no sugar. Limit dairy to 1 to 2 servings per day, and juice to 1 small glass a day, and avoid sugary drinks. And lastly, I have that I want to talk about specifically right now is use healthy oils like olive and canola oil for cooking, on salads, and at the table. Limit butter and avoid trans fat. It looks like a lot of these pieces of our plate have some caveats. And those caveats, or those exceptions, are coming from, again, our U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. For Americans, most people are not getting enough or not consuming enough fiber, potassium, calcium, and vitamin D. And these are nutrients of concern. So we want to encourage foods that have these components to them, most of which are fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. 3/4 of your plate should be plants. The other ones that we are concerned with overconsumption, things that we want to limit, again, limit, not eliminate, are things that are high in saturated fat, things that have added sugar, and things that have added sodium. Americans are typically getting too much of these nutrients, but they're still important and they still belong somewhere within our diet. And we'll talk a little bit about that kind of balance when it comes to holiday eating today, because those things tend to be loaded with the things, with the nutrients that we are getting too much of, such as added sugar, salt, and saturated fat. I've taken a lot of what these resources had to say. I had probably a 20-page document with all the information because there's so much information out there. Not all of it may pertain to you. Some of it may be super pertinent for you. Some stuff you may want to take home for a friend or a family member or loved one, a little factoid or tip that could help them with whatever condition that they're dealing with to make maybe their holidays a little bit easier. I've tried to organize this presentation into actual eating and nutrition foods when it comes to the holidays, but a lot of it and a lot of the bulk of this presentation are going to be behaviors, or the ways that we behave around food, or the external environment that changes the way, that affects the way that we eat, whether we're hungry or not. The last thing, before I actually dive into the whole thing, is physical activity. You'll notice on your healthy eating plate, again, your healthy eating plate, yes, it is about food and nutrition, but in that bottom left corner, it says stay active. So we want to ensure that we are maintaining a level of physical activity during this holiday season, despite maybe eating a little bit differently. And the language here is important too, because it says stay active, not get active. We should all be active to begin with. Activity is anything that gets you moving. So we are looking for 150 minutes of physical activity, of moderate level physical activity per week. Those are things like walking, things like cleaning your house, going up the stairs, in some kind of length of time. One of our recommendations even during this time, or if you're having trouble finding the time, because the holidays can be such a busy time of year, is to even split that into 10 to 15-minute segments. Typically, we would recommend people do 30-minute segments of exercise 5 times a week. If that doesn't work for you, you can do a morning and evening 15 minutes 5 times a week. However it works for you, we just want to make sure that you're getting at least like 10 to 15 minutes at a time. You could also do vigorous physical activity if you're somebody who likes to run, if you're someone who likes to dance or skate. It might be cold enough where we get some freezing temps, and you might want to go ice skating. So that could be a fun, vigorous physical activity. Winter sports, any of those types of things. That, because you're doing more intense physical activity, you require less time to meet your recommendation. So you can do 75 minutes. You can half the amount of time by doing more vigorous physical activity. Some of the recommendations for that, I know that the weather is kind of cold, but it's still nice to get outside. Just wrap yourself up a little bit. When it comes to the holidays, you'll be surrounded by family, friends, loved ones. You can make it a kind of group activity. Is one of the recommendations, or one of the tips that I have, is to go on a stroll around the neighborhood or around the park with your friends and family. If someone's in from out of town, it's a great opportunity to catch up while walking, right? Instead of just sitting around. There's going to be a lot of sitting going on around the holidays, especially around the table. So anywhere where you can find a little bit of movement is going to be great. And I also want to say that, if you miss a day, if you are unable to do it for 1 day or 2 days, or even to meet the recommendation, there's always tomorrow. There's always later in the day. And you're not going to undo anything you've done from, overeating through exercise. Exercise is just going to be part of your baseline healthy lifestyle habits. Okay. But I'm a dietitian, so I'm more interested in talking about food. So that's what we're going to be talking mostly about today. So one of the main pieces of advice I have is to plan ahead. And I know that sounds simplistic, but it applies in all sorts of situations. And the better you can plan ahead, the better chances you're going to have of success. So planning ahead, that means, with your physical activity as well as with what you're eating throughout the holidays. A little bit of forethought can really set you on the path to success. These are things like, just asking what your host may have available in terms of dishes at the next holiday. This time of year, our next holiday we're talking about is Thanksgiving, right? So asking your host, or if you are the host, making it well known what might be on the menu. We're acting as though maybe somebody has, a chronic condition that requires dietary changes, or even if someone has an allergy, kind of the same thing. If you want to maintain a healthy dietary pattern throughout this time too, making sure that there's options available. If there's no options available for you, or your host is a little overwhelmed, is not prepared to make something that is flexible for you, it's time to put the onus on you. Bring your own. This is something that I've adopted. I have ended up being the veggies and dip friend at a party. So anytime somebody invites me over and I ask if I can bring anything, I'm often asked, can you bring veggies and dip? People like it. If it's there, people will eat it. And oftentimes they'll be thankful that there is a healthier option available rather than like cheeses and nuts and a lot of these richer foods. That way you can have something that is slightly filling, but a little bit lighter before you have a larger meal. So that's one tip I have for you, is to fill up on veggies before you even go into the big feast, right? But yeah, if there's not a whole lot of healthy options available to you, then my recommendation is to bring your own. Introduce someone's new favorite tradition or someone's new favorite dish. It could be really nice. There's also part of planning ahead is knowing that there are going to be so many different foods to choose from at your holiday meal. Find out what the things you really want to, I don't want to say splurge, but the things that the eating plate, but find out what those things are that you are like, these are seasonal. I only get to have this once a year. I really want to enjoy it, and allow yourself to have that. Part of the dietary guidelines for Americans includes honoring our cultural traditions. If your great grandmother's sweet potatoes, her yams are the best thing you've ever had, then you shouldn't have to skip out on that. But let's form our plate in a helpful way that promotes balance and allows you to fit other healthy choices in there without feeling guilty for enjoying yourself. There's also an important point I want to bring up, which is healthy hydration, which is on our healthy eating plate, right? So it says that we should drink water, tea, or coffee with a little no added sugar. That's great. It doesn't say anything about alcohol on here, which I do want to talk about because it can be a large part. It can play a large role in terms of like large holiday gatherings and celebrations. We should be limiting our alcohol. For women, it is considered the consideration is 1 drink a day for women and 2 drinks a day for men. But around the holidays, we have, wines and beers, and those add up in calories, especially when you're eating alongside of them. There's also things like eggnog, which I know may seem silly, but it's really loaded with saturated fat and with sugar. There are some really cool recipes out there, though, for a lower fat or a lower sugar version that you can make for yourself, and they will be just as satisfying. But if eggnog is just one of those things that, Aunt Betsy makes that you absolutely adore and need to have a sip of, allow yourself to have that and not feel guilty about it, but make sure that you're hydrating alongside of that too. Some other tips, including, start with a fruit or a vegetable, is to end with a fruit or a vegetable. Typically a fruit, they make really great desserts or mini desserts. You can do kind of like the office style where you cut things into tiny pieces to try a small bit of a few things, but not totally overdo it. Sometimes you just want that one sweet bite. And speaking of, one small bite, many people find success with, popping an after dinner mint or even chewing a piece of gum to say, that's it. I'm done. It'll freshen your breath, but it'll also act as a mild appetite suppressant. But I sure hope that after your holiday meal, you're not, super hungry still. When I think about Thanksgiving, right, because that's the next holiday coming up, I think about the cornucopia, that wicker basket that's shaped like a horn. And it's a celebration of harvest, right? That bountiful harvest that comes in the fall season. So when you are filling up your plate, think about all of these seasonal foods and all these seasonal fresh fruits and vegetables. I'm saying fruits, but like winter squash are technically a fruit. It's fine. To enjoy lots of these rich whole grains and vegetables that come at this time of year. And yeah, just really lean into that, knowing that this is a season to celebrate harvest and bounty and sharing that with our friends and family and our loved ones. The other stuff I want to talk about is not necessarily like eating particular foods, but behaviors and tips that we can do surrounding the holidays and those types of things. A lot of us are affected by the external environment when it comes to eating. When you're at a party, you tend to eat more. You're social, you're with your friends, you're with your family. But one thing I think is important is to be mindful and turn our attention inward, right? We have external cues that may trigger us to eat, but we also have internal cues, our biology, right? Our body knows when it's time to eat. When you start to get hungry, your stomach kind of starts to churn and it gets like a little grumbly. You might get a headache or you might feel kind of tired. We all know what it feels like to be a little bit hungry. And paying attention to that cue is so important when it comes to not overindulging at the holidays, because at that point you may end up, if you're ignoring those feelings of hunger, but also of fullness, you may end up overeating and not feeling so great at the end of it. Check your portion sizes. Everybody tends to jam that plate full. Our healthy eating plate has a size. It's not, however big you print it out. It's not whatever size of plate that you have at the house. The size is 9 inches, which is about the size of a standard envelope or a slightly longer than like a sheet of paper as the diameter. So it's a pretty big plate. But you can use a smaller plate. I'd be surprised if I was the first person to mention, but using a smaller plate can help us put less food in front of ourselves because we are plating to the size of our actual vessel. So if you choose a plate that's actually 6 inches in diameter, the amount that you can physically put on it is a lot smaller, and you end up with a smaller portion of anything that you put on there, which may not overwhelm you as much, and it may not fill you or overfill you to a point of being uncomfortable. Keep the indulgences and the snacks that maybe aren't the best for us out of your home during the season, because they're everywhere else. Someone's going to bring them to the office. They're going to be at your holiday parties. You don't need them in your home too, unless somebody is gifting them to you. You can certainly freeze them for another day or pull them out as you want. Like if there's something like cookies or a cake or something, those things freeze super well. And then you can take them out piece by piece as you're ready to eat them. Having them on the counter is one of those external cues that is going to make you want to eat them every time you pass the counter. On the subject of hunger and fullness signals, being mindful of those is also the amount of time it takes for your body to recognize those signals. It's a hormone response that comes with the shrinking and stretching of your stomach. So when you're hungry, your stomach kind of shrinks up and there's a hormone that's released that says, hey, it's time to fill this stomach up again. And there's another hormone that is released when your stomach starts to stretch to a point where it is full and it tells you, stop eating. But it takes upwards of 15 to 20 minutes for that signal to actually get from here to here. So when you want to go back for seconds because you're not quite full yet, give it a few minutes. Give it a few minutes before your second plate. Make conversation, ask some questions to somebody who you haven't seen in a while, maybe take a lap, pet the dog, take a few minutes and decide again. Take that moment of mindfulness to find out, am I really hungry or am I just sitting with a bunch of people who are eating and we're enjoying ourselves? Socializing is a great aspect of the holidays. You get to talk to everybody, but it can also kind of distract us from our eating. So be mindful of when you actually are eating and take and savor each bite. The flavors and the smells and all that stuff leads to our wonderful memories of the season. You're visiting with people. You're not visiting with their food, right? So yeah, be confident and decisive and make a little bit of a plan for yourself. Know what's there and decide what you want to splurge on. Decide what maybe you want to fill the rest of your plate with that is healthy and does fit within a healthy dietary pattern. Decide when you do want to include physical activity. I'm going to demo a couple recipes today for you. You can probably tell I've got some ingredients out before me. I wanted to show you how to make a couple recipes a little bit healthier without sacrificing flavor. We're going to lean more into herbs and spices rather than salt and sugar. And I also want to show you what to do with a bit of those leftovers, because who knows what to do with all these leftovers that isn't just reheating them. We can reimagine them by adding healthy ingredients and making them last, making them last a little bit, including them in a lot of our healthier dishes. And I'm going to show you just how I'm going to do that today. So the first one I'm going to show you is my mashed potatoes. I'm often asked to bring mashed potatoes to places. No one knows how I make them, and that is fine by me. I have here, I've already cooked some potatoes because that's the part that takes kind of the longest amount of time. Here I have, these are russet potatoes. They are known for their texture in terms of how they make a nice mashed potato. I also use Yukon Golden here too, because they all kind of have their different textures and a little bit of a difference in flavor, but these are my favorites for making mashed potatoes. You'll also notice that I left the skin on. The skin has a lot of fiber. There's 2 grams of fiber in a medium-sized potato. 1 of the grams is in the skin. So consider that a really fiber-packed piece of a food. And I don't want to lose any of that nutrition. So for this recipe, and I'll be providing all of these recipes as far as links are concerned in the chat below, so you'll have access to them. But yeah, this recipe calls for 5 or 6 russet or Yukon Gold potatoes. Then it calls for Greek yogurt. This recipe doesn't use a whole lot of saturated fat, which is one of those nutrients that we are supposed to be limiting according to the dietary guidelines for Americans. So that's what we're going to be doing with that. Let me just have a couple ingredients I got to grab. When I said a couple, I meant a couple. So instead of butter, to make it creamy, I'm going to be using non-fat Greek yogurt, and it does add a little bit of tanginess to it too. I'm also going to be using a bunch of herbs. I'm going to be using parsley and chives, and a little bit of salt and pepper and some garlic powder and onion powder. And there's a lot of flavor going in there, but not a whole lot of the stuff that makes mashed potatoes quote unquote bad, right? Now, we're not putting in whole milk, we're not putting in butter, but we are putting in that moisture and we are putting in that flavor. So I also am using an immersion blender for this. If you don't have an immersion blender, you can certainly just mash them as you like. Again, it's a texture thing, whatever you prefer. This is calling for 1/3 cup. I'm eyeballing it. I printed this recipe, but for anyone who's ever been to my classes before will know that I almost never follow a recipe to the actual letter. But we're going to get close. We're going to do a little bit of pepper. Or a lot of pepper. I like a lot of pepper in my mashed potatoes. Okay. Little pinch of salt. And then some skim milk. And this, again, the recipe that I'm going to give you gives a range. And that is dependent on the amount of potatoes that you actually use and the amount of starch that those potatoes contain and how much they're actually going to suck up. So this is going to be a little noisy, so bear with me. It'll come together. One of the great tips I have about making mashed potatoes, especially if you're being the host and doing everything on your own at home, is instead of using up an additional burner to make the mashed potatoes, use a crock pot. Because it'll keep them warm, but also you can cook them. It'll just take a longer amount of time, but it's less hands-on time to cook the potatoes, which is great. Mm-hmm. And the skins do blend up nicely too. If you are someone who prefers a puree, that's fine. You know, you'll get your fiber from somewhere else. Just know that keeping the skins in there is a good amount of fiber that'll help fill you up. And this is a great recipe to do that because we're using our low-fat dairy products, which are low in saturated fat compared to their whole milk or buttery counterparts. And honestly, no one can tell the difference on a large plate full of stuff. All right, these are pretty thick. So I'm going to add a little bit more milk as I am going to add some of our flavoring ingredients. So little by little, right? I'm going to grab garlic and onion powder. You, of course, could use fresh if you'd like. Okay. And I end up using a lot just because I prefer it that way. Okay. Oh, and of course our parsley and chives. Chives are a type of like oniony flavor, so they fit really well with the season and all. And parsley is definitely not in season anymore, but dried parsley is totally good. If you're going with dried herbs versus fresh, these tend to be a little bit more concentrated in flavor, the dried ones, because they don't have the water content. They're less diluted. They're more of a concentrated flavor. Yeah. And as I'm making these potatoes, this is one of our biggest tips that is ubiquitous among our holiday foods, which is to limit, again, our saturated fats. But any cream-based dishes, things that are physically creamy or cheesy, can be made as a lower fat version. But again, I don't want you to necessarily adulterate some of your favorite recipes. If that's something you want to splurge on, go right ahead. Yeah, these are still super thick, which is great. I mean, you could stop here and that would be absolutely great to serve. I'm going to add a little bit more just so it's easier for me to blend. And this is just skim milk. We're just looking for liquid, right? We're looking for liquid that is dairy based, or it doesn't even have to be dairy based. I've done this with oat milk, just to get those potatoes creamy. And I'm not going to change my camera view to above so you can see just how creamy these potatoes are getting. And I didn't use any butter. I didn't use any butter in this recipe at all. Now at the table, if you're going to put gravy on them, that's a different story. But it's good to have something that you have a healthy base, and anyone can put whatever they want on it to make it their own, to make it how they like it, how it's their favorite, you know. But these potatoes are coming out really creamy and good. Oh my gosh. Okay. Of course, a chef must taste, right? Because I don't want to serve anybody something that is not good, right? People aren't going to eat healthy food if it doesn't taste good, right? But it can be just as easy as that. I like that. I think it needs a little salt, but for demonstration purposes, this is so simple. You saw the whole thing start to end, other than me boiling the potatoes, which that's a really boring part of the process. So don't worry about it. I'm not going to add more salt to these now because a lot of people deal with the mashed potatoes as a leftover and don't really know what to do with their mashed potatoes other than eat mashed potatoes. But I came across a really cool recipe that I want to share with you about how to use your leftover mashed potatoes, especially with the flavoring like this. It is a mashed potato leek soup, which is incredibly relevant to the season, isn't it? So leeks are in season. Leeks are an onion, much like our chives, which we put in our potatoes. So the flavors are kind of going to just very easily meld together. This is very conducive. This recipe is very conducive to making a potato leek soup. Look at all the flavor that we already put in there, right? We've got our black pepper, we've got chives, we've got parsley, we've got onion, and we've got garlic. We've got it working in there. And this is a super easy recipe. It's got 5 ingredients, one of which is mashed potatoes or leftover mashed potatoes. I will send you this recipe too. It's a Martha Stewart recipe. The first ingredient is a teaspoon of butter, but that's just to saute the leeks up. So I'm going to be replacing that with olive oil just because that's how I prefer to saute my vegetables. Now, I picked these leeks up from the store. They were very dirty. Make sure to wash your leeks thoroughly. You might have to peel back some of those layers. And most people, when they make leeks or when they use leeks, are only using this like white part here, but this part is totally edible up top here too. It just is a little bit more tough. So what I'm going to do is, while I'm preparing the rest of the recipe, is saute the tops and then I'll saute these tender white shoots at the bottom. I want to get all that flavor in there. I do. I don't want to miss any of those leeks. And I'll change so you can see above again my style of cooking here. So I'm going to do 1 leek at a time into these beautiful little ribbons. So these are just the tops I'm going to do. They're very slightly more fibrous than the rest of it. So I want to get those going first, and then the rest is a bit more tender. Okay. And those will go in just fine. So if someone sends you home with stuff, someone wants to send you home with mashed potatoes, you're like, I'm kind of mashed potatoed out. Know that there is more that you can do with them. There is a second life to them. And by the way, this is increasing the amount of fruits and vegetables that we're eating, right? Because yes, we're taking our potatoes, but then we're going to add in some more vegetables. Want to make sure that this light's okay. There we go. This always takes me a moment, so thank you for your patience. So have any of you at home tried to kind of healthify your holiday recipes? And if so, I kind of want to hear what you've been doing, because I think you may have a lot more ideas than I can just come up as one person. Obviously, if you're in this program, you've been thinking about eating healthy during the holidays. So you're in good company. So I'm just going to throw these in. And we're going to hear them start to sizzle pretty quickly. Okay. I've never made this particular recipe before, but I'm really looking forward to trying it. You can see the successes and failures and see how good it goes. And if you want to try it at home, half lengthwise and chop in a large saucepan. Leeks cook and stir for about 3 minutes. Add broth and thyme, and then whisk in your mashed potatoes. That simple. I would also like to put in a shout out to one of my favorite ingredient hacks. I don't like buying vegetable broth. What I'll do is I will take the ends of my leeks. I'll take the tops of my onions. I'll take the paper from my garlic. Anything like that. Ends of green beans. Oh, there's lots of veggies that we're making for our Thanksgiving and for our holidays, right? Any of those things. And I'll put them in a freezer safe bag. And once that bag gets full, I will put it onto my stovetop and let it bubble away on low for about an hour, 2 hours. However long it takes for that water to get nice and colorful. Watch me not being super careful about these leeks either. I'm watching out for my fingers, but it doesn't really matter how you chop the leeks in the soup, right? Yes, and then you make your own veggie broth. So all of those veggie bits and pieces that are made with your favorite vegetables, right? They're not just any old vegetables, they're your favorites. Oh, wow. This is the part where I wish we had smell-o-vision, right? So I'm going to throw in some of these tender bottom bits here. And I love this overhead camera so y'all can see exactly how I'm doing it, right? Because this is how you can do it at home, and you'll see just how simple it is. Hopefully it's simple. Hopefully I'm exemplifying how simple it is. So the recipes that I'm demonstrating today, this is just one of a few that I'm demonstrating because I wanted to make a model of some of the nutrition tips that we're talking about for this holiday eating class. So this one is adding fruits and adding vegetables to dishes, right? We're adding 2 whole leeks in here, right? Those are enormous. So we're adding leeks, and for our other recipes, we're also going to be adding vegetables and reducing the amount of saturated fat as well, because that's what the dietary guidance tells us to do in order to promote health and reduce risk of chronic disease. What else am I going to do here? I'm going to add broth. It says to add half a cup of water, but I think I'm just going to add, instead of 3.5 cups of broth and a half cup of water, I'm just going to add 4 cups of broth. But you do you. And 3 sprigs of thyme. So it looks like this little woody guy. And the best way that I know to get the little leaves off there is to kind of just run your fingers over it backwards and kind of pop that top off of it off, because that's a little bit more tender. Yeah. There we go. And these little bits can go in your broth bag too. Those are full of flavor, those woody stems. They're not super palatable. They don't have a great texture, but they go great in our broth bag to add another dimension of flavor. And because I'm going to give them a little rough chop, but they're pretty much small on their own already. So I'll just run my knife over them real quick. There we go. Nice pinch of thyme there. If you're not timed out from your turkeys, right, you could always add whatever herbs are your favorite. Sage, you know. I'm a big fan of sage. Okay, I'm going to add my broth. This is a low sodium broth as well. It costs the same to get the low sodium broth, or if you make it at home, just don't add salt or add only a little bit of salt until you're ready to actually cook with it, because you can always add salt. You can't take it away. Okay. So this is a good way to use up your mashed potatoes. I think this is going to be pretty tasty. But we're making kind of like a whole lunch here. You know, you're not too hungry as you're watching this program. Yeah, and then we're just going to whisk in some potatoes. That sounds great. Okay, I think it calls for 2 cups of mashed potatoes, so I'm just going to slap some in there. Okay. And we already blended this, right? So it should blend out pretty easily. And we didn't use any butter or anything in here. It might be weird to have yogurt in your soup, but it's a pretty common ingredient. I don't think that's too crazy. And I think it might actually taste pretty good. I think I would like this soup. You can see it from above. Yes. Yes. I think I would like it to be a little bit more potatoey. So I'm going to add a little bit more. And again, it's got all of these herbs and spices in there already to give it the soup a really nice flavor before we even, tweak it at all. Okay. I probably want to cook that down for a little while, but yeah, it was just that easy to do. I'm going to give it a try just to see where we're at so far. And for those of you who want like a creamier potato leek soup, feel free to blend this down too. So if you like more of a pureed soup consistency, this will thicken up. Obviously, the more that you cook it, water will evaporate, it'll thicken. But you can also use the immersion blender on it, and that'll thicken the soup with the actual leeks as well. It does need salt, but it's something that we can add at the table. We can add it. We don't want to add salt for anybody. Say you have somebody coming who hasn't mentioned that they have a heart condition and are watching their sodium intake. One of the things, another tip I want to bring to light is that other people may have conditions or may want to be eating healthier without you even knowing it. So by providing that element of choice and providing, their ability to add their own stuff is really helpful, because I would hope that, you want somebody to do that for you. You would do that for somebody else. This is the season of giving after all. So those are potatoes. That was a fun little recipe to try. I'm going to keep cooking that down a little bit, and I don't know if this will reach, but we can blend it down a little bit too. Because I like my potato leek soup a little less. So that thickens up quite nicely. Obviously, you can make your own tweaks to it because you're the chef. But I think this is a solid recipe. I think I'm going to take this one with me this year. I hope that you find it useful too. This whole thing I wanted to do was to make a lighter lunch of Thanksgiving fare, in case that you felt like you maybe overindulged the day before. You overindulge on Thanksgiving. It happens. But you still have to eat. You have to eat every day. You want to maintain your body's energy levels. You want to feed it the good stuff. So today we're going to be eating a little bit lighter and a little bit more akin or aligned with our healthy eating plate with more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains on there. So what better way to, have a midday lunch than with a soup and a salad made from your Thanksgiving leftovers. So far we've done our soup. Now we're going to do a salad, and it's not meant to be boring. There's a lot of ways to do salad, and I think jazzing it up with some Thanksgiving leftovers can be a really fun way not to waste food, and also boost the nutrition of those foods as we work our way through them. Okay. A lot of people ask me which is better for me, white meat or dark meat. And there's not that much of a difference. There's a little bit more fat in dark meat for sure, but not so much that it makes a huge difference. It depends. If you're doing something like a rotisserie or frying a turkey, it won't really matter too much. But you don't necessarily have to have the breast. You want it to be skinless. The skin holds on to a lot of that fat on the turkey, so pay attention to that. But otherwise, choose your favorite cut. Turkey is a lean meat to begin with. Like we said, on our healthy plate, it says right on our healthy plate, choose fish, poultry, beans, and nuts. Choose. So we're already choosing turkey. Great job. If you're a vegetarian, that's fine too. Choose, something else. What I'm going to do here, didn't showcase this recipe, but I just happen to have some leftover garlicky green beans. This is one of my favorite recipes, and it can go in place of, say, a green bean casserole. If green bean casserole, again, is your favorite, then, make space for that. But we also have things that you can make like garlicky green beans. And this is just a bunch of garlic and olive oil and a little bit of salt. And the green beans are sauteed until they're just tender. So they still have a little bit of bite to them. They still have a little bit of crispness. I'm going to plop those in there. We're going to make ourselves a beautiful little salad today. So it's also winter squash season. If somebody made yams at your Thanksgiving and you got leftover yams, use some of those in the salad. Or you have roasted cauliflower or something like that. Absolutely. These are just some red onion. I just like a little bit of that bite of red onion in my salads, and I like the color of them too. So we'll do like that. And right, we want to eat fruits and vegetables of a variety of colors, because they all have different vitamins. We want to make sure that we're getting all of our vitamins, because our bodies need all of the vitamins. So all of the colors it is. A portion of, or a serving of meat is about the size of the palm of your hand or a deck of cards. That's one serving. You are welcome to have more than one serving at a time, but just for example, this is about the size of the palm of my hand and about the thickness of a deck of cards. And when you cut it up, it goes a long way. Salads are such a versatile vehicle for lots of different foods. If you don't know what to do with stuff, throw it in a salad or throw it in a soup. You see people making the gobbler sandwiches, right? They've got the turkey, they've got the cranberry sauce and the stuffing, all of that in there, which is fine. That's great. But there's lots of different ways to use these ingredients, to utilize these ingredients. I'm using a little bit of a low-fat feta. Okay. And then, because it's also harvest season, I was just talking about winter squash, I have pumpkin seeds. These ones have already been roasted. If you have made a pumpkin or a winter squash, even a butternut squash for, a vegetable, or you've made a pumpkin pie, the seeds are full of minerals. They're full of magnesium and zinc, and they even have these plant-based proteins in them, and they're super high fiber, and there's healthy fats. I got nothing bad to say about these seeds, just that you don't need a whole ton of them in your diet all at the same time, but they make a nice little crunchy snack, and they make a nice little crunchy addition to your salad too. So don't let those go to waste either. Just roast those. We even use the toaster oven for it, just so we don't have to heat the whole oven again. Easy peasy. And then this part I'm really excited to share with you. This is a recipe I found while I was looking for recipes for this class to showcase. This one is cranberry sauce. Okay, so I made cranberry sauce last night just for this class, and it is naturally sweetened with orange juice and orange zest and about 2 tablespoons of honey. And that's it. I make from fresh cranberries, which are a Jersey local food. And yeah, I'm really excited. It was super simple. It took about 15 minutes to cook everything down. But the real reason I have this is because I'm going to make a cranberry vinaigrette out of it. We always end up with leftover cranberry sauce, always. And it doesn't need to be that way. You don't need to not have anything to do with it. There's plenty to do with cranberry sauce. And I'll definitely send you the recipe for the naturally sweetened cranberry sauce that I mostly followed the recipe for. And I'll also send you the recipe for the cranberry vinaigrette with leftover cranberry sauce. Hooray! We're going to use a half a cup of the leftover cranberry sauce. And this is definitely more vinaigrette than we need, but we can save it in the fridge and use it for our next salad. And I can make a half a batch of this too. Yeah, that's a lot of cranberry sauce to be using. Okay. So I'm going to use a 1/4 cup instead. Yeah. And then 2 tablespoons of balsamic and 2 tablespoons of olive oil and a 1/4 cup or more of water, depending, to thin it out. So I'm going to use a little bit of olive oil. So instead of 2 tablespoons, I'll use 1 tablespoon. And again, we're always eyeballing it. And I wanted to use, in the spirit of the season, a re-gifted balsamic that one of my coworkers gave to me because she thought it would be useful in my classes. And it has turned out to be on multiple occasions. I said balsamic. I didn't necessarily say the dark balsamic. This is a white balsamic that is infused with orange flavor, which I think is going to pair super well with the orange that is already in the cranberry sauce. It won't be too sweet also because I didn't use a whole lot of sweetness in my cranberry sauce to begin with. Okay. And we'll get a little bit of water in there because I can tell that is going to be thick. There we go. Just a splash in there. Is that actually it? This is to put it in a blender and combine until smooth. But this is good enough for me, I think. I like it with like a little bit of chunk in there too. And you want to taste what's actually going on. Let me give some try. That is delightful. Oh my gosh, I'm very excited. I'm going to put a little bit more water in just so it pours nicely onto our salad. Yep, that was it. That was our simple leftover Thanksgiving meal made healthier as leftovers should you have overindulged the day prior. Let's see how our soup is doing. We are thickening up quite nicely. The starches from the potatoes are coming out and they're helping that thickening process. And let me show you how easy this cranberry sauce pours on and makes such a beautiful, colorful salad with all these delightful leftover, reused and reimagined ingredients. Oh, that looks so good. Beautiful. I think half of the recipe was a good idea. But I have some other ideas I can rattle off to you too. I do hope that you give some ideas of your own into the chat too. And of course, any questions that you may have, we'll definitely talk about at the Q&A portion at the conclusion of this program. I've got limiting gravies and cream sauces, which we talked about, reducing our saturated fat, choosing meat without the skin, of course, substituting some of our dairy ingredients. We really exemplified a lot of these in our recipes today. Use less sugar in your baked treats. Of course, if you need to follow a very specific traditional recipe, please do so. But a lot of banana breads or pumpkin breads can certainly handle a reduction in their sugar content. Or you could even use apple sauce or apple butter in place of oil in some recipes too. So for example, every cup of butter or margarine, you can replace with a half a cup of applesauce or apple butter. That's just how that substitution works. It's a half cup to a cup. Leave sweet toppings to the side, again, allowing yourself and allowing other people to have the choice of how they want to have their meals taste and serve. There's a personalized component to this too, of course. So the more we can let people stick to their own specific health goals or to cater to their own chronic conditions or chronic diseases, the better. And I hope that your holiday allows for that too. Let's see. So as we are going through this program, just think about how this may apply to your own health goals and set realistic expectations of what this holiday may look like. Allow yourself a little bit of grace when it comes to your holiday eating. It's really a time of indulgence for sure, but there's a lot of opportunity to make healthy choices too. And now that we know better, hopefully we can do a little bit better this year. Let's not make our New Year's resolutions to go on a diet, right? We can continue through our holiday season with health in mind. Every day is a new day. So, if Thanksgiving wasn't your day, then the day after certainly can be. And small choices, they add up. Our dietary guidelines for Americans say eat right, bite by bite. So every bite adds up, be it, a little less healthy or a little more healthy. Those small choices add up over time, and they can be deliciously nutritious and fit within a celebratory holiday, just like this one that's coming up. So thank you for watching our program, teaching a little bit about healthy holiday eating and some tips and a couple recipes that maybe you want to try at home. At this point, we'll move into our Q&A portion of the program. So looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Taryn.
Yeah. No, I'm so happy to share that with you. I had a really nice time putting together that program. So I'm definitely ready to hear any, comments or questions from any of our participants today.
Yeah, and it's perfect timing too for making our grocery list for Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah, I got the recipes that I used down in the chat as I was making them little by little, just so you have access to all of those healthy recipes that I was sharing.
Yeah, feel free everyone to ask away. I know I have some questions. I was wondering if you had any tips on, you mentioned substituting like nut milks or oat milk. Sometimes I've noticed those have like a sweetness to them. Do you have any tips for cutting that sweetness away or adding to it to make it more savory?
Yeah, I'm actually so glad you asked. When going to the grocery store and looking at all of the wall of options of milks that you now can choose from, and non-dairy substitute types of milk. It's important to turn those containers around. Oftentimes they will have added sugar in them, and added sugar is one of those nutrients that we want to limit according to the dietary guidelines for Americans, and it now is listed on the nutrition facts panel. So it'll say underneath the carbohydrate portion, it'll say added sugar, and you want it to be 0 on any milk that you choose.
That will definitely help with the sweetness.
Yeah, they're really not too sweet otherwise, be it almond, oat, soy. Yeah, they won't be sweet if you ensure that you're purchasing the one that is unsweetened.
Great. I thought your idea too for cooking the potatoes in the crock pot. I don't know why I've never thought of that. I cook everything else in the crock pot, and I never thought, oh, maybe I should cook those in there.
I know a good kitchen hack around this time of year is like like gold.
Yeah. Between that and maybe the air fryer too, taking up some of my cooking space.
Oh yeah.
Also, I had a question about your white balsamic infused with orange.
Yes.
Is that just accessible at any grocery store, or?
So most grocery stores will carry a white balsamic right next to the regular balsamic. The one I got was, again, regifted, but it was from a local shop that is in New Jersey. I can get you the name of that later on. I don't have it on me at the moment, but it was someone else's gift and it didn't come from too far.
It sounded delicious. I had to.
Yeah, you could also do a squeeze of orange in there too, just with a regular white balsamic to give you that pop of flavor that you're looking for.
Oh, great. And then it was applesauce. You said half cup of applesauce is the substitute for 1 cup of butter.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so fat and butter as a fat is used for tenderness and moisture when it comes to baked products. So when you're substituting that out, you also want to choose something that's going to make that product still moist and tender. It just so happens that applesauce is almost liquid-like, whereas butter is more solid. So that's just how that ratio checks out.
That's great. I guess one more question. I know I'm so full of questions. Everyone feel free to. You still have the chat open if you want to put any questions.
You got me at your disposal for this. So for sure.
The link to the plate, or I don't know if it's handout, but you put it up for a second, the serving size.
Yes.
Do
Let me get that for
or
you.
If you could send that later, I'd love that.
I'm going to put it up now because this is one of my favorite tools. This is the Harvard Healthy Eating Plate, and it comes from, again, the Harvard School of Public Health, but it's based on the U.S. Department of Agriculture's My Plate, but it does have a few key differences where, the USDA recommends drinking milk or having dairy. This one says, dairy fits on the plate. It's just not, you have to have it. This one also includes healthy fats as part of the plate and activity as part of the plate, because you can't cook without oil, you can't cook without flavor. So I appreciate that it comes, the plate puts that suggestion forward and allows you, like that fits. It fits because it's necessary.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I see that you put that link up there.
Yep. Yeah, that's the whole page too. So the plate is on there, but also a write-up about where they're sourcing their information from, and about each particular part of the plate. It goes into much further detail. I also snipped out a piece of the plate. You didn't notice because I snipped it out, but a piece of the plate that is part of the vegetable portion of the plate, it says to limit potatoes. And I hate that part of it. You see in our video that I made potatoes. Potatoes are perfectly healthy food, and it's the ways in which that we make them, right? Sour cream, butter,
right,
fried. It's the ways that we eat potatoes. But as you saw in the video, there are ways to make them a little bit more on the healthy side and to limit those saturated fats that we're so used to cooking potatoes in.
Well, I really love having potatoes with the skin still in, so I'm glad to hear that adds fiber, because now I can, See, I do that on purpose.
It's for you. It's for your health.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. If there's no more questions, I'll go ahead and I just wanted to let everyone know about a few upcoming programs here at the library. Oh, actually, before I get to that, if you wouldn't mind putting up the link for the Better Health membership. Anyone who's 65 or older can join for free, I believe, right? And
Yes, it
then,
is a free program to join. It's a free membership to join. And then all the programs within the Better Health membership program are also free. So
great.
there's no harm in signing up.
Yeah,
I am going to put the link for our Hamilton events and the Hamilton programs that happen at the RWJ Fitness and Wellness Center on Quaker Bridge Road as well.
great.
Just
Then
how to
I'll go ahead.
find
I'll
those.
save all these links to everyone, and then we'll send you like a compiled list with the follow-up email that has the survey with it. We're also recording this, so they'll have access to this later too, if there's anything you need to come back and see. While you're looking for that, oh, you have the link. Okay, and let me go ahead and get that.
Lots of stuff to share.
Yeah, really.
In the spirit of sharing, in the spirit of giving.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for our families, we do have a virtual cartooning class coming up on Friday. We have Story Stroll all through this month at Sked Street Park. And then Wallaby Tales is coming up on December 1st, which is a real popular one with our families. And for our adult patrons, we have our author interviews with the Library Speakers Consortium. Tomorrow, they'll be interviewing poet Joy Harjo. And then in 2 weeks will be Naomi Alderman. Our director, Kim, will also interview local filmmakers Luke Momo and, oh, I'm sorry, I have his last name cut off, Harrison Kraft, about their sci-fi thriller Capsules. So those you can register on our website, penningtonlibrary.org. And that's all from me. If there's anything else you'd like to add, Taryn, it's been so great hearing all the tips and tricks for the holiday season.
No, you've got a lot out of me today. So if there's no questions, I'm happy to leave it there. But I'm available through our RWJ Hamilton's community education. I host programs all the time. So if you have more burning questions or you just want to hear more about nutrition, cooking, any of that kind of thing, feel free to engage with our programs.
Thanks so much. All right. Have a great holiday season, everyone, and a good afternoon too. See you soon.